The text message came through exactly 37 minutes before I was supposed to leave for my own birthday dinner. I stared at my phone, the mascara wand frozen halfway to my right eye, as the words on the screen slowly sank in. Sorry, Mom, we need to cancel tonight. Ryan has a work thing come up. Rain check? Love you. My daughter Melissa hadn't even bothered to call, just a text, as if canceling the dinner she'd promised to host for my 65th birthday was as trivial as rescheduling a coffee date. I set down the mascara wand before I could stab myself in the eye with it and took a deep breath. The gorgeous navy blue dress I'd splurged on $300 I shouldn't have spent thing on my closet door, tag still attached. I'd been so excited to wear it tonight. I texted back with trembling fingers. Everything okay? I can help if you need something. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. All good, just super busy. Ryan says hi. We'll make it up to you soon. No apology, no acknowledgement that I'd been looking forward to this for weeks, just dismissed. At 65 years old, I was apparently so unimportant that my birthday celebration could be tossed aside with a casual text message. I sat down heavily on the edge of my bed, still half made up, and felt something inside me finally snap. This wasn't just about a canceled dinner. This was about 15 years of being the family safety net while being treated like an afterthought. Ever since my husband David passed away 10 years ago, I'd been the one everyone leaned on, but no one actually saw. I was the emergency babysitter, the interest-free loan provider, the listening ear for every crisis. I was the one who helped with the down payment on Melissa and Ryan's house. I was the one who paid for my grandson's braces when their insurance wouldn't cover it. I was the one who kept my mouth shut when they took lavish vacations while still owing me thousands of dollars. And what did I get in return? Canceled plans, forgotten thank yous, the occasional duty visit where they spent more time on their phones than talking to me. I looked at myself in the mirror, one eye perfectly made up, the other bare. For a moment, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. When had I become someone who accepted being treated this way? When had I started believing that being needed was the same as being valued? Not anymore. Not after today. I finished applying my mascara with a steady hand, added some lipstick, and zipped myself into that beautiful navy dress. Birthday or not, canceled plans or not, I wasn't going to sit home feeling sorry for myself. I deserved better. I grabbed my purse and car keys, then paused at my home office. The file folder labeled Family Financial Documents sat on my desk where I'd left it yesterday. Inside was the paperwork I'd been preparing, documents that would have made it official that Melissa and Ryan would be beneficiaries of my retirement accounts and the house I'd paid off years ago. Documents that would have formalized what had been happening unofficially for years, me providing the financial safety net for their lives. I picked up the folder and placed it back in my filing cabinet. Those papers could wait, maybe indefinitely. Instead, I pulled out my address book. Yes, I still kept one of those and flipped through until I found the number I was looking for. Eleanor Simmons, my old college roommate who had moved back to town last year. We'd reconnected at a community center art class and had been meaning to get together properly. I dialed her number, heart pounding slightly. Eleanor, it's Margaret. I know this is last minute, but any chance you're free for dinner tonight? 30 minutes later, I was seated across from Eleanor at Castello's, the Italian restaurant I'd always wanted to try, but that felt too fancy to eat at alone. The host had raised an eyebrow when I requested a table for 2 instead of the reservation for 4 that my daughter had made and then abandoned, but one mentioned that it was my birthday and he found us the perfect corner table. I have to say, this is the best impromptu dinner invitation I've had in ages, Eleanor said, raising her wineglass. Happy birthday, Margaret. Thank you for saving me from a night of ice cream and self-pity, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. Oh, please, look at you in that gorgeous dress. You weren't heading for ice cream, and you know it. I laughed. Maybe not, but I was definitely teetering on the edge of self-pity. Family drama? Eleanor asked perceptively. I sighed. My daughter canceled my birthday dinner 37 minutes before I was supposed to be there, by text message. Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. The one who lives 20 minutes away and whose down payment you helped with. The very same, I confirmed. And the one whose husband got that promotion last year that you were telling me about. I nodded, taking a larger sip of my wine. The same one who borrowed money for that cruise in January. You have an excellent memory, I said dryly. Eleanor set down her glass with a decisive clink. Margaret Sullivan, forgive me for being blunt, but your daughter is taking advantage of you. The words hung in the air between us. I'd thought them myself 100 times, but had always pushed them away. Hearing them spoken aloud by someone else made them impossible to ignore. I know, I admitted quietly. I've known for a while, but they're my family. What am I supposed to do? Well, you're having dinner with me instead of sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself. I'd say that's a good start. Eleanor said, the question is, what are you going to do tomorrow, and the day after that? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down to see my daughter's name. Is that her now? Eleanor asked. I nodded, reading the message. She wants to know if I can watch Ethan tomorrow. Her babysitter canceled. Eleanor didn't say anything, just raised an eyebrow at me. I put the phone away without responding. Let's order dessert. I hear the tiramisu here is legendary. That night, after saying goodbye to Eleanor with promises to meet again soon, I drove home feeling more clear-headed than I had in years. The house was quiet when I let myself in, but it didn't feel lonely the way it sometimes did. It felt peaceful, mine. I changed out of my dress, carefully hanging it up rather than relegating it to the back of my closet. I'd find another occasion to wear it. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with a notepad and started to make a list. It was time to make some changes. The next morning, I woke to 3 missed calls and 5 text messages from Melissa. I read through them as I sipped my coffee. Mom, did you get my text about watching Ethan tomorrow? Mom, I really need you to watch him. My meeting got moved up. Are you mad about dinner? We'll reschedule, I promise. Mom, please call me back. It's important. I'm dropping Ethan off at 8:30. I have to be at work by 9. I checked the time, 7:45. I picked up the phone and called my daughter. Mom, finally! Did you get my messages? I'm getting Ethan ready now. I can't watch him today, Melissa, I said, my voice calm but firm. There was a pause. What do you mean you can't? Do you have an appointment or something? No, I don't have an appointment. I'm just not available today. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, I don't understand. You're always available. There it was. The crux of the problem laid bare with such innocent bluntness. I was always available, always reliable, always there when needed, and easy to ignore when not. Not today, I said. And in the future, I'd appreciate it if you'd ask rather than tell me when you need childcare, preferably with more than 12 hours notice. Is this because we canceled dinner? Mom, it couldn't be helped. Ryan. Had a work thing. Yes, I know, I interrupted. That's fine. Things come up, but you could have called me instead of sending a text. You could have suggested an alternative right then instead of a vague rain check. You could have remembered that I was looking forward to this and acknowledged that canceling would disappoint me. I didn't think it was that big a deal, Melissa said, her voice smaller now. That's the problem, I replied. You didn't think about me at all. I could almost see her stunned expression. In all our years, I had never spoken to her this way. I had swallowed disappointments, accepted last-minute impositions, forgiven thoughtlessness without comment. I had been afraid of being alone, of being unloved, of being unnecessary. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I need to go, Melissa. I hope you find someone to watch Ethan. I ended the call before she could respond and sat there for a moment, heart racing but mind clear. Then I went to get dressed. I had plans today, real ones, not just an excuse. I was meeting Eleanor and two other women from our art class for brunch, followed by a visit to a gallery exhibition we'd all been wanting to see. My phone rang twice more as I was getting ready. Melissa, then Ryan. I let both calls go to voicemail. Whatever emergency they were manufacturing, it wasn't mine to solve. The brunch was delightful, 4 women in their 60s and 70s, all with stories to tell and perspectives to share. No one was checking the time or half listening while scrolling through a phone. We lingered over coffee, talking about books and travel and the art we'd soon be seeing. "We should do this monthly," suggested Patricia, a retired librarian with a wicked sense of humor. "First Saturday brunches. Mark your calendars, ladies." "I'd love that," I said, meaning it deeply. My phone had been silent throughout brunch, but as we were leaving the restaurant, it buzzed with a text. Ryan this time. "Margaret, please call Melissa. She's upset and had to take a personal day because you wouldn't help with Ethan. We really needed you today." I showed the message to Eleanor, who read it and handed the phone back with a snort. "Needed, not wanted," she commented. "There's a difference." Yes, I agreed. There certainly is. I put the phone away without responding and followed my new friends to the gallery, pushing aside the familiar tendrils of guilt. This was going to be harder than I'd thought. The gallery was showcasing an exhibition of textile art, intricate quilts and weavings that told stories through fabric and thread. I found myself standing for a long time before a piece called The Invisible Woman, a quilt showing the shadowy outline of a female figure surrounded by reaching hands. "Powerful, isn't it?" said a voice beside me. I turned to see a man about my age, silver-haired and dressed in a casual blazer. "Very," I agreed. "It captures something I've been feeling but couldn't quite name." "Thomas Wendell," he said, offering his hand. "Art enthusiast and terrible painter." "Margaret Sullivan," I replied, shaking his hand. "Art appreciator and mediocre watercolorist." He laughed, and I found myself smiling in response. We moved together to the next piece, then the next, exchanging observations and occasionally disagreeing about interpretations. It was the most engaging conversation I'd had with a man since David died. When he asked if I'd like to get coffee after the exhibition, I surprised myself by saying yes. One coffee turned into two, and simple conversation turned into sharing stories about our lives. Thomas was a widower, retired from teaching English literature at the local community college. He had 2 sons, both living out of state, and 4 grandchildren he saw mainly on video calls. "They're good boys," he said of his sons, "but they have their own lives. I try not to impose." "That's different from imposing," I pointed out. "Wanting to be part of their lives isn't the same as expecting them to revolve around yours." He considered this, nodding slowly. "You're right. I think I've been too careful about not being a burden. Maybe I've made myself too easy to forget instead." His words hit close to home. Wasn't that what I had done too? Made myself so accommodating, so unfailingly available, that I had trained my family to take me for granted. "I'm learning that setting boundaries doesn't mean people will love you less," I said. "At least, that's what I'm hoping." "Testing that theory recently?" Thomas asked perceptively. I found myself telling him about the canceled birthday dinner, the entitled texts, and my decision to start valuing my own time and feelings. "Good for you," he said when I finished. "It's never too late to teach people how to treat you. That's what my wife used to say anyway." She sounds wise. She was, he agreed with a soft smile. Too wise for me, probably, but I got lucky. We exchanged phone numbers before parting ways, with tentative plans to visit another gallery exhibition the following weekend. As I drove home, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours. I'd been fully present in my own life, not waiting to be needed by someone else. There were 3 more messages when I finally looked, all from Melissa, growing increasingly concerned about why I wasn't responding. The last one had a different tone. Mom, are you okay? I'm getting worried. Please just let me know you're all right. I can come over if you need me to. I texted back, I'm fine, was out with friends, home now, talk tomorrow. Her response was immediate. Thank God. I was about to call hospitals. What friends? The question took me aback. As if I couldn't possibly have friends she didn't know about. As if my social life began and ended with her family. New friends, I replied simply. Good night, Melissa. I turned off my phone, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in my favorite chair with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. The house was quiet, but it felt different than before. Not empty, but full of possibility. The next morning was Sunday. Normally, I would go to Melissa and Ryan's for the standing family lunch they hosted, when they didn't cancel, which had been happening more frequently lately. Today I decided I would not be going. Instead, I stayed in bed a little longer, reading my book, then made myself a proper breakfast and ate it on my back patio, enjoying the spring sunshine. When I turned my phone back on, there was a voicemail from Melissa. Mom, just confirming you're coming to lunch today. We want to talk about what happened. Also, Ryan was hoping to discuss that investment opportunity he mentioned last month. You know, the one where you could help us with Ethan's college fund? Anyway, see you at noon. I deleted the message without calling back. At 11:30, when I would normally be gathering my things to drive over, I changed into gardening clothes and headed outside to plant the flowers I'd bought last week. I'd been putting it off, always too busy helping someone else to focus on making my own home beautiful. At 11:45, my doorbell rang. I knew who it would be before I answered. Mom, Melissa said as soon as I opened the door. Why aren't you ready? We've been waiting for you. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was 38 years old, beautiful in the way I had been at her age, with David's eyes and my stubborn chin. When had she become someone who could text a cancellation 37 minutes before her own mother's birthday dinner? When had I allowed that to be okay? I'm not coming to lunch today, I said calmly. What? Why not? Is this still about your birthday dinner? Mom, I said we'd reschedule. This isn't about the dinner, Melissa. This is about me deciding how I want to spend my time and who I want to spend it with. Today, that doesn't include lunch at your house. She stared at me as if I'd started speaking in tongues. But it's Sunday. We always have lunch on Sunday. Not today, I said firmly. But Ryan wants to talk to you about Ethan's college fund. It's important. There it was. The real reason for the concern. Not my absence, but the absence of my checkbook. I'm sure it can wait, I replied. Melissa's expression shifted from confusion to irritation. What's going on with you? First, you won't help with Ethan when we need you. Now you're skipping family lunch for no reason. Are you mad at us? Is that it? I'm not mad, I said truthfully. I'm just making different choices about my time and my resources. I've been thinking a lot about boundaries. Boundaries? She repeated as if I'd said something obscene. We're family. There aren't supposed to be boundaries. That's where you're wrong, I said gently. Even families need boundaries. Maybe especially families. So what? You're just going to start saying no to everything. Stop helping us when we need you. Not everything. But I am going to start asking myself whether saying yes is truly in everyone's best interest, including mine. Melissa's face flushed. This isn't like you, Mom. You've always been there for us. Always. Yes, I agreed. I have been, and I'll continue to be there for real emergencies and important moments. But watching Ethan because it's convenient, or writing checks because it's easier than saying no's, things aren't good for any of us in the long run. So you're punishing us because we had to cancel one dinner, she said, her voice rising. This isn't punishment, Melissa. This is me finally recognizing that I've been treating myself as less important than everyone else in this family. And that's not a healthy example for any of us. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back to her car without another word. I watched her drive away, feeling a complex mix of emotion, sadness, guilt, but also a surprising sense of relief. The conversation hadn't gone well, but it had been honest. That was a start. I went back to my garden and continued planting my flowers. With each one that went into the soil, I felt like I was planting something new in myself, as well as self-respect, boundaries, the courage to be more than just someone else's safety net. My phone rang several times that afternoon. Ryan once, Melissa twice. I let the calls go to voicemail, not out of spite, but because I needed time to think, to be sure of my own mind, before engaging in what would inevitably be difficult conversations. In the evening, I sat down at my computer and began researching financial advisors. If I was going to make changes to my will and investments, I wanted professional guidance. The folder of documents I'd been preparing was still in my filing cabinet, but I was no longer certain that my original plan was the right one. Monday morning brought a knock at my door, just as I was finishing breakfast. This time it was Ryan, dressed in his work suit and looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Margaret," he said when I opened the door, "can we talk? I can be a few minutes late to work." I invited him in and offered coffee, which he accepted. We sat at my kitchen table, an unusual scenario in itself. Usually, Ryan and I only talked at his house, on his schedule. "Melissa's pretty upset," he began, cradling his coffee mug. "She thinks you're angry with us." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just making some changes in how I approach my relationships, including with you and Melissa." Ryan nodded slowly. "Because of the birthday dinner." "That was part of it," I acknowledged. "But it's been building for a while. I've realized I've been too available, too willing to drop everything when you or Melissa call. And in the process, I've enabled some patterns that aren't healthy for any of us." Ryan was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. Then he surprised me. "You're right," he said. "We've taken advantage of your generosity. I know we have." I hadn't expected this admission, and it momentarily left me speechless. "I've told Melissa before that we rely on you too much," he continued. "But it's been so easy. You never say no. You never ask for anything in return. And we're busy, and money's always tight, even though we make good salaries, and I've been the path of least resistance," I finished for him. He nodded, having the grace to look ashamed. "Something like that, yes." "I appreciate your honesty, Ryan. That's a good place to start." He glanced at his watch. "I do have to get to work, but I wanted to say I understand, and I'll talk to Melissa. We can do better." "Thank you," I said, walking him to the door. "And Ryan, that investment opportunity you wanted to discuss? I think it's better if you explore other options." His face fell slightly, but he nodded. "I understand. Thanks for being straight with me." After he left, I felt lighter somehow. One honest conversation down. It was a beginning. The next few days passed quietly. I had a consultation with a financial advisor, started volunteering at the community center teaching watercolor to seniors, many of whom were younger than me, which I found amusing, and had dinner with Eleanor and our growing circle of friends. Thomas called to confirm our gallery date for the weekend. I found myself looking forward to it more than I wanted to admit. Melissa remained distant, responding to my texts with one-word answers. I gave her space, understanding that her pride was hurt and her expectations upended. Change was hard for everyone. On Thursday evening, as I was sorting through old photos for a project at the community center, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Melissa standing there, looking tentative. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Of course," I said, stepping back to let her enter. She followed me to the living room, where the photos were spread across the coffee table. "What's all this?" she asked, picking up a picture of herself at about 5 years old, sitting on her father's shoulders at the beach. "Just going through some old memories," I said. "The community center is doing a project on family histories." "Community center?" "I've been volunteering there, teaching watercolor." "Oh," she said, sounding surprised. "I didn't know you were doing that." "There's probably a lot we don't know about each other these days," I said gently. She set down the photo and took a deep breath. "Mom, I'm sorry about your birthday dinner. We shouldn't have canceled like that, especially not by text. It was thoughtless." "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I appreciate the apology." "And Ryan told me about your conversation," she continued, "about how we've been taking advantage of you." I waited, letting her find her own words. "He's right. We have been. It's just, you've always been there, you know? The one person we could always count on. I guess I started to take that for granted." "I'll still be here," I assured her. "That hasn't changed. I'm just trying to find a better balance." "Ryan said you told him no about helping with Ethan's college fund," she said, a question in her voice. "Yes," I confirmed. "I've decided to make some changes in how I manage my finances. I've been meeting with an advisor." "Oh," her disappointment was visible. "Is it because you need the money? Because if you're having financial problems—" "I'm not having financial problems," I interrupted. "I'm making choices about my future that include taking care of myself first. The way you and Ryan do for yourselves and Ethan." She looked as if she wanted to argue but thought better of it. "I guess that makes sense." "I hope so. And I hope you know that this doesn't mean I love you or Ethan any less. It just means I'm learning to love myself a little more." Melissa was quiet for a long moment, looking at the photos spread across the table, images of our family through the years. Me as a young mother, her as a growing child, David healthy and strong before the cancer took him. "Dad always said you were the strongest person he knew," she said finally. I never really understood what he meant until now. I felt tears prick at my eyes. He was biased. "No, he was right," she insisted. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." She reached across the table and took my hand. It wasn't a perfect resolution, and I knew there would be more difficult conversations ahead. Old patterns didn't change overnight, but it was a start. "So," she said, gesturing at the photos, "tell me about this community center project." I did, and from there, our conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. She told me about Ethan's school play, about the promotion she was hoping for, about the book club she'd joined, but could never find time to attend. I told her about my new friends, about the gallery exhibitions, even, hesitantly, about Thomas. "Mom," she exclaimed, "you have a date? Why didn't you tell me?" "It's just a gallery exhibition," I demurred. "With a man," she pointed out. "The first one since Dad. That's a big deal." "I'm not sure what it is yet," I admitted, "but I'm looking forward to finding out." We talked until it was later than either of us had planned. As she was leaving, she turned at the door. "I want to reschedule your birthday dinner," she said. "A proper one this time. Would Sunday evening work? I promise no cancellations." "Sunday would be lovely," I agreed. "And Mom? Bring your friend Thomas. I'd like to meet him. After she left, I sat back down among the scattered photographs, feeling something shift and settle inside me. The Margaret in these old pictures' young wife, devoted mother had always put everyone else first. It had seemed like the right thing, the only thing to do. But the Margaret one was becoming now understood something different, that taking care of myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary, that being needed wasn't the same as being valued, that real love had room for boundaries and respect. I picked up the photo of David and me on our wedding day, both of us so young and full of dreams. I think you'd be proud. I whispered to his smiling image. I'm finally figuring it out. Then I gathered the photos, made myself a cup of tea, and opened my laptop to email Thomas about Sunday dinner. Life was opening up in ways I hadn't expected, offering second chances and new beginnings. All because I'd finally decided I was worth more than being someone else's safety net. The rest of the week passed in a gentle rhythm of my own making. I attended my watercolor class, had coffee with Eleanor, and spent an afternoon helping Patricia organize books for a community center donation drive. Simple activities, but they were choices I had made for myself, rather than obligations I had accepted from others. Saturday arrived sunny and clear, perfect weather for my gallery date with Thomas. I found myself standing before my closet, deliberating over my outfit with an attention I hadn't given to my appearance in years. I finally settled on a coral blouse that David had always said brought out the warmth in my complexion, paired with comfortable but stylish pants and low heels. Thomas was waiting when I arrived at the gallery, looking distinguished in a light blue button-down shirt and khakis. His face brightened when he saw me, and I felt a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in a very long time: anticipation, possibility, the simple pleasure of being seen. Margaret, he said warmly, I was hoping you wouldn't change your mind. Why would I do that? I asked, genuinely curious. He shrugged, a self-deprecating gesture. Old habits, I suppose. My wife used to say I always prepare for disappointment, so I'll be pleasantly surprised when things go well. I laughed. She sounds like a wise woman. The wisest, he agreed, offering his arm. Shall we? The exhibition was a collection of contemporary photography, all centered around the theme of rebirth and renewal. We moved through the gallery slowly, lingering before images that spoke to an abandoned building reclaimed by nature, an elderly couple renewing their vows, a sunrise over a winter landscape. Look at this one, Thomas said, guiding me toward a photograph near the back of the gallery. It showed an older woman standing at the edge of the ocean, arms outstretched, face lifted toward the sky. Her silver hair streamed behind her in the wind, and her expression was one of pure, unbridled joy. It's called Liberation, he noted, reading the placard. It's beautiful, I murmured, studying the woman's face. There was something so powerful about her evident freedom, her embrace of the moment. I wonder what her story is. Maybe she just paid off her mortgage, Thomas suggested with a smile, or told her ungrateful children what they could do with their demands. I laughed, surprised by his perceptiveness. Or maybe she just decided it was finally her turn to live. That, he said softly, is something worth celebrating. We lingered over that photograph longer than the others, both of us seemingly drawn to its promise of later life liberation. When we finally moved on, Thomas's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt both novel and strangely familiar. After the gallery, we found a small cafe with outdoor seating where we could enjoy the spring afternoon. Our conversation flowed easily, covering books we'd loved, places we'd traveled, the challenges and joys of growing older in a world that often seemed designed for the young. My son sent me a smartphone for Christmas. Thomas told me, pulling out a sleek device. He said it would help us stay connected. What he meant was it would help him check on me without actually having to call. Melissa got me one too, I admitted, but I've come to appreciate it. I've been using it to keep track of my new activities. New activities? He echoed, raising an eyebrow. I found myself telling him about my recent changes: the financial advisor, the community center volunteering, my growing circle of friends. It felt good to share these developments with someone who had no preconceptions about who I was supposed to be. It sounds like you're in the middle of a personal renaissance, Thomas observed. The phrase struck me. A renaissance, a rebirth, like the photographs we just viewed. I suppose I am, I agreed. Better late than never, right? Much better, he said, his eyes warm. And not late at all. Right on time, I'd say. When he asked if I'd like to have dinner, I didn't hesitate. We found a small bistro with a quiet corner table and shared a bottle of wine as the conversation continued to flow. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been so fully engaged, so present in a moment. There was no checking my phone for texts from Melissa, no mental calculations about what time I needed to leave to be available for someone else's needs. There was just this good food, good company, and the simple pleasure of connection. I'd like to see you again, Thomas said as he walked me to my car later that evening, if you're interested. I am, I replied honestly. Very much so. His smile was like sunrise. How about Wednesday? There's a jazz concert in the park. Wednesday would be perfect, I agreed. He leaned in slowly, giving me plenty of time to step back if I wanted to. I didn't. His lips brushed my cheek, a gesture both courtly and promising. Good night, Margaret, he said softly. Good night, Thomas. I drove home with the windows down, letting the spring air wash over me. 65 years old, and I felt like a teenager again, giddy with possibility, alive with anticipation. It wasn't just Thomas, though he was certainly part of it. It was the feeling of steering my own life again, of making choices based on my own desires, rather than others' expectations. Sunday dawned bright and clear, and I spent the morning in my garden planting herbs in the small raised bed that David had built for me years ago, but that I had neglected after his death. As I worked the soil between my fingers, I thought about the birthday dinner that evening. Melissa had texted twice to confirm a marked change from her casual cancellation the week before. Still on for 6? Her latest message read. I've made your favorite lemon cake. Looking forward to it, I replied. Thomas will be joining us. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came through. Great, can't wait to meet him. I smiled at the phone. This was progress, Melissa making an effort, me being honest about what I wanted. Small steps, but in the right direction. At 4:30, my doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my gardening apron and went to answer it, surprised to find Ryan standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable. Ryan, I greeted him. Is everything okay? Dinner's not for another hour and a half. Everything's fine, he assured me quickly. I just wanted to talk to you privately before tonight. I invited him in, curious about what couldn't wait until dinner. He declined my offer of tea or coffee, instead pacing my living room with nervous energy. So, he finally began, Melissa told me you're bringing a date tonight. I raised an eyebrow. Yes, a friend. His name is Thomas. That's great, Ryan said, though his tone suggested otherwise. It's just, well, we were hoping to discuss some financial matters tonight, and it might be awkward with a stranger present. Ah, now I understood. What financial matters did you have in mind? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Ryan stopped pacing and sat down on the edge of my sofa. We've been looking at private schools for Ethan. The local middle school isn't great, and we think he'd do better in a smaller environment. But the tuition is significant. I see, I said. And you were hoping I would help with this tuition. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. We thought you might want to invest in Ethan's education. It would be a great use of some of your retirement savings. My retirement savings, I repeated slowly. Well, yes, Ryan continued, apparently missing the warning in my tone. It's not like you need all of it, living alone in this paid-off house. And you've always said you want what's best for Ethan. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that anger wouldn't help the situation. Ryan, I do want what's best for Ethan, and for you and Melissa. But that doesn't mean emptying my retirement accounts to fund choices that you can't afford on your own. His face hardened slightly. It's not like we're asking for a vacation or something frivolous. This is Ethan's education we're talking about. Yes, it is. I agreed. And as his parents, that responsibility falls primarily to you and Melissa. If private school is important to you, then perhaps you need to look at your own budget and priorities. What's that supposed to mean? He asked defensively. It means that last year you took 2 luxury vacations and bought a new car, I said calmly. Those were your choices, and I didn't comment on them. But now you're here asking me to fund a private school education that you could possibly afford yourselves if you made different choices. Ryan stood up abruptly. I thought you'd be happy to help. You always have been before. And I've realized that wasn't always the best thing for any of us, I replied, standing as well. Ryan, you and Melissa are smart, capable adults with good jobs. You don't actually need my financial support for these things you wanted because it's easier than making hard choices yourselves. So that's a no then, he said flatly. That's a no, I confirmed. And I think it would be better if we didn't discuss financial matters at dinner tonight. Let's just enjoy being together as a family and getting to know Thomas. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. Fine, I'll see you at dinner. After he left, I sat down heavily in my favorite chair, feeling drained but also strangely empowered. That conversation would have been unthinkable for me just 2 weeks ago. I would have agreed immediately, written the check, and felt quietly resentful afterward. The fact that I could say no firmly, but without anger, felt like its own kind of liberation. I showered and changed into a casual but pretty outfit for dinner, adding a touch of lipstick and the pearl earrings David had given me for our 25th anniversary. Then, I drove to Thomas's apartment to pick him up. Nervous? He asked as we headed toward Melissa and Ryan's house. A little, I admitted. My relationship with my daughter is evolving at the moment. In my experience, evolution is usually uncomfortable but ultimately beneficial, he said wisely. I smiled. Let's hope so. Melissa and Ryan's house was a beautiful craftsman style in one of the nicer neighborhoods in Tona House they could afford, largely because of the substantial down payment I had contributed. I pushed that thought aside as I parked in the driveway. Tonight wasn't about the past. It was about finding a new way forward. Ethan answered the door, his 11-year-old face lighting up when he saw me. Grandma, happy late birthday! He threw his arms around me in a hug that reminded me of what really mattered in all of this. Not the money or the slights or the power struggles, but the love that connected us across generations. Thank you, sweetheart, I said, hugging him back. This is my friend, Thomas. Ethan regarded Thomas with the frank curiosity of a child. Are you Grandma's boyfriend? Thomas smiled. I'm her friend who happens to be a boy. Is that okay? Ethan considered this, then nodded. I guess, as long as you're nice to her. I intend to be very nice to her, Thomas assured him solemnly. Melissa appeared behind Ethan, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Mom, you're here, and you must be Thomas. I'm Melissa, please come in. Her welcome seemed genuine, though I could see her assessing Thomas as we entered, taking in his dignified appearance, his good manners, the way he helped me off with my light jacket. Approving, I thought, though still cautious. Ryan was in the kitchen, pouring wine with a fixed smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Our earlier conversation hung between us, but he was making an effort to be civil. Thomas, he said, offering his hand. Good to meet you. Wine? Thank you, Thomas replied. And it's good to meet you all. Margaret speaks very highly of her family. I watched as Melissa and Ryan exchanged a quick glance at that, perhaps wondering what exactly I had told this stranger about our recent conflicts. But the moment passed, and we moved into the dining room where the table was set beautifully, with flowers and candles and my favorite dishes. This looks lovely, I said sincerely. Well, it is a belated birthday celebration, Melissa replied. We wanted to make it special. Dinner progressed smoothly, the conversation flowing more easily than I had expected. Thomas was a natural storyteller, sharing amusing anecdotes from his teaching days that had us all laughing. Ethan was fascinated to learn that Thomas had once taught literature at the community college and peppered him with questions about his favorite books. You know, your grandmother is quite the artist, Thomas told Ethan as we were finishing the main course. Have you seen her watercolors? Ethan looked at me in surprise. You paint, Grandma? I nodded. I've been taking classes at the community center. I'm not very good yet, but I enjoy it. She's being modest, Thomas said. She's quite talented. I didn't know that, Melissa said, her voice holding a note of surprise. You never mentioned it. There are probably a lot of things we don't know about each other, I replied, echoing the words I had said to her in my living room a few days before. But we can change that. As Melissa cleared the dinner plates and Ryan went to get coffee, Thomas engaged Ethan in a discussion about the book he was reading for school, showing a genuine interest that clearly delighted the boy. I watched them together, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine I'd consumed. He's nice, Melissa said quietly, coming to stand beside me. I'm glad you brought him. Thank you for including him, I replied. It means a lot to me. She hesitated, then added, Ryan told me about your conversation this afternoon, about the private school. I tensed slightly. I hope you understand my position. I do, actually, she said, surprising me. Ryan and I talked about it after he got back. You're right, we could probably afford it ourselves if we made some changes. We've gotten too used to you being our financial safety net. The simple admission took my breath away. That's very insightful of you. She shrugged, a self-deprecating gesture. I've had some time to think about things this past week, about how we've been treating you. It's not how I want to be, and it's not what I want to teach Ethan. We all do the best we can, I said gently, and we can all do better when we know better. Cake time, Ryan announced, carrying in the lemon cake aglow with candles, not 65 of them, thankfully, but a festive number nonetheless. They sang Happy Birthday, and I made a wish as I blew out the Candelsa wish for continued courage to live authentically, to maintain the boundaries I was establishing, to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than mere utility. As we enjoyed the cake, Ethan suddenly asked, Grandma, can you teach me to paint sometime? The request caught me off guard. You want to learn watercolors? He nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, I like art class at school, but we never do watercolors. I'd love to teach you, I said, touched by his interest. Maybe you could come over one Saturday afternoon. This Saturday? He asked eagerly. I glanced at Melissa, who nodded her approval. This Saturday would be perfect. After dessert, as Thomas and Ryan discussed a recent baseball game, and Melissa cleared the dessert plates, I helped Ethan with a school project he wanted to show me. It was a simple family tree, with names and photos stretching back to his great-grandparents. This is really well done, I told him, genuinely impressed by his neat work. Thanks, he said, pointing to a photo of me as a young woman. Mom gave me this picture of you. You look different but the same. I smiled at his description. That's what happens when you get older. You're still you, just with a few more miles on the odometer. He frowned. What's an odometer? It's the thing in a car that measures how far it's traveled, I explained. The more miles, the more experiences. He considered this. So you have lots of experiences. Yes, I agreed. And that's a good thing, even with the difficult ones. They all teach you something. Like what? He asked, genuinely curious. I thought for a moment, aware that my answer mattered. Like, it's never too late to change how you let people treat you, or how you treat yourself. He nodded solemnly, as if filing this wisdom away for future reference. Then, with the mercurial attention span of youth, he was off to show his dad something on his tablet, leaving me with the family tree spread out before me. I traced the branches with my finger, feeling the weight of connections, of history, of the love that bound us together despite our flaws and missteps. We were family imperfect, sometimes selfish, often blind to each other's true needs, but family nonetheless. And families could change, could grow, could learn new ways of being together. Thomas appeared at my side, his presence a warm comfort. Everything okay? Better than okay, I said truthfully. Just thinking about family. Complicated things, families, he observed. Indeed, I agreed. But worth the effort. When it was time to leave, the goodbyes were warmer than I had dared to hope. Ethan hugged me tightly, extracting a firm promise about Saturday's painting lesson. Ryan shook Thomas's hand with what seemed like genuine respect, and Melissa embraced me with a whispered, "Love you, Mom. Thanks for giving us another chance." "Always," I assured her. "That's never been in question." In the car, Thomas was quiet for a moment before saying, "They seem like good people who lost their way a bit. It happens." "Yes," I agreed, "to all of us at one time or another." "Your grandson is a great kid," he added, "very perceptive." "He is," I said proudly, "and yes, he doesn't miss much." "Including the fact that I'm not just your friend who happens to be a boy," Thomas said with a smile. I glanced over at him, heart quickening. "Oh? What are you then?" "I'm hoping to be someone who matters to you," he said simply. "Someone who sees you clearly and values what he sees." The words touched something deep inside me. I'd like that very much. When we reached his apartment building, he invited me in for a nightcap, but I declined gently. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was learning to savor each step of this new journey rather than rushing ahead. "Another time," I promised. "I'll hold you to that," he replied, leaning across to kiss Minot on the cheek this time, but softly on the lips. A brief touch, full of promise. "Good night, Margaret," he said as he got out of the car. "Good night, Thomas." I drove home through the quiet streets, windows down, enjoying the cool night air and the sense of possibility that seemed to surround me now. The house was dark when I arrived, but it didn't feel empty as I let myself in and moved through the familiar rooms. It felt like a sanctuary, a place that was truly mine. In my bedroom, I changed into comfortable pajamas and sat at the small desk where I kept my personal papers. The folder labeled Family Financial Documents was still in my filing cabinet, but I no longer felt the same urgency about finalizing those arrangements. There was time to think, to plan, to make decisions that would be right for all of us. I opened my planner instead and began filling in the coming week: watercolor class on Tuesday, jazz concert with Thomas on Wednesday, lunch with Eleanor and Patricia on Thursday, volunteering at the community center on Friday, painting with Ethan on Saturday, a life taking shape day by day, choice by choice. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Thanks for coming tonight. It meant a lot to all of us. Ethan can't stop talking about his painting lesson." I smiled as I texted back. I had a wonderful time, looking forward to Saturday with Ethan. A moment later, another text came through. "And Mom, Thomas is great. Dad would approve." Tears pricked at my eyes as I replied simply, "I think so too." I set the phone aside and went to the window, looking out at the night sky scattered with stars. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle sounded melancholy and hopeful all at once, like life itself. 2 weeks ago, a cancelled birthday dinner had felt like the last straw, the final confirmation that I had become invisible to the people I loved most. But that disappointment had sparked something unexpected, a determination to become visible again, first to myself and then to others. The journey wasn't over. There would be missteps and old patterns reasserting themselves. Melissa and Ryan might forget the lessons of these past 2 weeks. I might find myself slipping back into the role of silent provider, putting everyone else's needs before my own. But something fundamental had shifted. I had remembered my own worth. I had found my voice again. I had discovered that setting boundaries didn't diminish love, but clarified it, distilling relationships to their truest essence. And I had learned, at 65 years old, that it's never too late to begin again. I thought of the photograph Thomas and I had admired at the gallery, the silver-haired woman with her arms outstretched to the sky, her face alight with joy and freedom. Liberation, the artist had called it. Yes, I thought, that's exactly what it is. I climbed into bed and turned out the light, settling into the comfortable darkness. Tomorrow was a new day in this new chapter of my life. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see what it would bring. Not just as someone's mother or grandmother or financial safety net, but as Margaret, fully and completely myself.